First of all, I'd like to thank all of you for being here. Please give yourself a round of applause for exercising your democratic right. And secondly, I'd like to thank the Strongsville GOP, especially Shannon Burns and his team, for putting this event together. Let's give them a hand. So, my name is Mark Pukita, and I would like to be your next U.S. Senator. Now, let's do a little more audience participation. How many here have never run for office before, have never held office, and aren't career politicians? Please put your hands up. I haven't either. Who here didn't go to an Ivy League school? Put your hands up. I didn't either. Who here is not a lawyer? Hands up. I'm just like you, right? That's what I want to try to prove with that little exercise. So what I like to do is tell you the reason why I'm doing this, a little bit about me, and then we'll get to platform issues. At the end of 2019, I sold a business that I've been growing for 25 years. It was a $100 million, 800-employee IT staffing company. Over 25 years, we employed thousands of people. So I know how to run a business. I sold it. I realized, I was like, God, I've lived the American dream, right? And I had recently had a grandson. And I thought, he will never have the opportunity I had to do better than my parents did, which I did, if things keep going the way they are. And like you at that time, I was yelling at the TV. I was putting out borderline inappropriate stuff on social media. Maybe not borderline. And then I saw Rob Portman on TV. And I realized that that man hasn't done a single thing we sent him to Washington to do. So rather than be angry, I decided to get in the race. In October of 2019, okay? I am the first and will be the only candidate that decided to register and primary Rob Portman when he was still the incumbent before he quit. Okay, and he quit because he knows he can't get reelected. And he won't be as valuable in the lobbyist community if he has an L on his record. So that's why I'm running. Let me tell you a little bit about me. I grew up in a lower middle class family. My parents were born into families that had outhouses when they were babies. My grandparents, my grandfathers, were both coal miners in northeastern Pennsylvania. They died of black lung. My mom's dad died when she was 6. They didn't graduate, they didn't go to college when they graduated from high school. They went to work, okay? I was raised, as I said, in a lower middle class family, but we never knew it. But for those of you who are old enough, we couldn't afford butter, we had margarine. Does anybody remember that? Because butter was more expensive. And then we didn't go on vacations, we went to visit relatives, right? We didn't go to the beach or somewhere like that. We didn't fly anywhere. I didn't fly until I was in high school, okay? I went to Ohio State. But I did get accepted at 2 Ivy League schools, Cornell and Penn. I went on a campus visit to Cornell. And at noon, I tapped my dad on the shoulder and said, let's get out of here. And he looked at me like, what? And I'm like, first, we can't afford it. And second of all, I've got nothing in common with these people. And I think that was one of the best decisions of my life. I came to Ohio State, got an electrical engineering degree, graduated with honors, went to work for IBM. I went to work for IBM on a Monday after graduating on Wednesday or Thursday because I had to. I graduated with 0 net worth, right? No debt, but also nothing in the bank, and I had to go to work, right? Built my company. I mean, I went to work for companies like IBM and EDS. Remember Ross Perot's company? the giant sucking sound thing about manufacturing, which he was so right about. So I started my company in 1996 and grew it, and that's why I'm here, and that's what I've done. I am a business person, okay? So let's talk about my platform. I am what you could call a Trumpian. If you've read any of Michael Anton's books, he's coined the term Trumpian and Trumpian economics and Trumpian policies, okay? I believe in 99% of what the policies of Donald Trump. I believe that the spending, although I believe he had to do it, is something that we've really got to get under control. So I'm America First, I'm conservative. I believe we need to move the Republican Party into a direction of being a populist, economic, nationalist party. And what I mean by that is it's America first when it comes to the economics, okay? We've got to become very, very worker friendly, and we've got to fix the wage and income disparity, but not do it through wealth redistribution. It has to be done by bringing manufacturing back to the United States, okay? And we saw that it was being done by President Trump, and that's what scared the living tar out of the Democrats. Because they realized that if he brought those people back, those jobs back, got those people the wage increases that they were seeing for the first time in decades, right? They would have more time to get involved in politics and understand that what he was doing for them was positive for them, and that the Democrat Party had been letting them down for a century, okay? So we've got to bring manufacturing back. We've also got to get back to traditional values, both patriotism. We need to make patriotism cool again, right? Patriotism was cool until when? Does anybody know? I think it was 2008, right? We need to make patriotism cool again, and we've got to get back to traditional values. Families, God-centered families. We just have to get back to tradition. So in terms of platform, I believe as a strict constitutionalist and a textualist that our federal government is anywhere from 50 to 75% bigger than it needs to be. Okay? And Alex de Tocqueville talked about this, that what was so great about America was that we didn't have this big bureaucracy. We had this very, very kind of light-controlled web over, at the time of what he wrote, 24 states. And he warned that what had happened in Europe was all these countries had these big bureaucracies, and those bureaucracies wore citizens down. And that's exactly what we're doing with the deep state. So I've got two solutions for the deep state. First, I will put legislation on the leader's podium, my first day in office, to defund the Department of Education and the Department of Labor. Those are the two easiest because they are duplicated in every one of the 50 states. And teachers in Ohio can't stand the Department of Education. Teachers. The unions love it. But that's one way to get rid of the deep state, because we don't have to pick and say, is he part of the deep state? Is she part of the deep state? We just get rid of them all, right? And I guarantee we will not miss a beat, right? Nothing will happen here on the ground in Ohio. We talk about kitchen table issues. Nothing will happen at your kitchen table. Your kids will come home from school and they'll be just as unhappy as they are right now. And the Department of Labor. We don't need the Department of Labor. And then you can go down the list. The Department of the Interior, the Department of Commerce, Agriculture, Health and Human Services. I mean, you can go right down the list, right? Because The powers enumerated in the Constitution of the federal government are few, and it was determined that to be that way. And the 10th Amendment solidifies that anything not specifically enumerated in the Constitution goes to the states. So I'm a big states' rights guy, but we got some problems there, do we not? Like if I go to Washington and send this stuff back to Ohio, they got to be able to catch it. And I don't think we can catch it right now. If you look at, for example, unemployment, and you know who's responsible for the unemployment system, right? Ultimately, as the chief executive, Mike DeWine. And he's failed miserably. And part of our infrastructure build needs to be IT in states to allow them to take back this work that's being done by the federal government. So that's one way to get rid of the deep state, right? Just to defund these organizations. If we look at those powers from the Constitution, it's protecting the country and its citizens, right? Foreign relations, and I would submit to you that also includes foreign trade deals, which President Trump showed us need to be retooled dramatically, right? And then interstate commerce and making sure we've got a fair trading market, if you will, even between our own 50 states. And then if you stretch it, which I think we would be okay with, coinage in a national currency. I don't think we each want to have, we don't want to have 50 currencies, but that's it. And everything else should go back to the states. And I'm totally serious about this. We have big problems. And big problems need big solutions, and we need to do it. We've been taking a paring knife to the fat on the roast. We need to be taking a meat cleaver to it, okay? And I can't do this alone, all right? We have got to find America First candidates who want a smaller federal government across the country and support them. House and Senate. I can't do it alone. But we don't need a majority of Republican representatives to do it. We just need 10 or 15% who are smart, who are loud, who are tenacious, and who don't care what anybody says about them. Okay? And in case you haven't figured it out, that's me. I do not care. You want to call me a racist, you go right ahead. You want to call me a greedy capitalist, you go right ahead. I just don't care. Okay? I just want to talk to you a little bit about how my campaign is different. I have already written a piece of legislation. Has anybody seen it? On social media censorship? There's one, okay? And this is the interesting thing. I've been publicizing it, and very few people, I think we want to go to the red meat stuff, but we don't want to go to the real meat. I want to go to Washington to stir the pot, but I also want to make the soup. I just don't want to stir things up like AOC does. I want to get stuff done. So I'm going to have more and more legislation. So if you go out to my website, campaign website, it's mark4ohio.com. Mark with a K, M-A-R-K, 4, ohio.com. And on there, you'll see proposed legislation. And I've got a social media censorship bill that is out there in Senate format. I even gave it the number SB 17, and some of you will get the irony in that, the number 17. But it's ready to go. I mean, it's in the format that I could lay it on the leader's desk, and we could be sending it to committee, or we could be voting on it. And we're going to do more and more of that. I want you to know what I'm going to do for you before I go and before you vote for me. Because it'll be there. And if I don't do it, you can run me out of town. The other thing that I'm going to take no salary or no compensation, just like Donald Trump. But I'm going to go further than that. People say, well, you get a book deal. Any book deals, any speaking, any lobbying, God forbid I would ever lobby, but any lobbying money I will give to charity for the rest of my life. Okay? I only ask one thing. When I die, any residuals go to my grandchildren split evenly. And I think that's fair. I've got this thing called a Pukita plan. It's got 5 aspects to it. Term limits, line item veto or single issue legislation, Hyper financial transparency. If you're running for a federal office and you're not prepared to take a financial proctology exam, don't run, all right? Public-only lobbying. Lobbying needs to be done in a room like this with cameras on. There's no reason to have secret lobbying. There's none. You can't, I haven't found a single person that could come up with a good reason to have behind closed doors lobbying efforts, okay? And then the final one is we need to outlaw offshore accounts. That is how these people get paid. You wonder why they're sending money to Pakistan for gender studies? Because 10 or 20% of that money is coming back to people who voted for it or put it in the legislation. We just need to stop it. And then finally, the other thing we need to do, as I go around the state, election integrity, and election integrity are the top 3 items that I hear from everybody. We need to get into the mode of forensically auditing every election. People say it costs too much. Let me tell you this. Do you realize that during the first 100 days of the Biden administration, the Democrats agreed to spend or allocated to spend, listen to this number, $100 billion every day. That's $10 trillion. 4 for the budget and 6 for CARES and the family and all the other nonsense. $100 billion a day. I mean, are we crazy allowing this? This is just nuts. So, kind of to wrap things up here. So if we get rid of Department of Education, Department of Labor, we're spending billions of dollars on those each a year. What do we do with that money? We could give it back to you in tax reductions. We could shore up Social Security. We could shore up Medicare, right? We can do this. This is what turnaround specialists in business do. They come in and they look at the finances and the assets the company has and decides, do we sell it? Do we sell those assets? Do we buy more? Do we redeploy them? Then you got to look at strategy, right? If you're focused on too many things like the federal government is, you don't do anything right. So they got to refocus on those 4 things that I talked about. And then the final thing is, when there's a turnaround, what happens at the top of the company usually? Not usually, always. It's new people. You fire the CEO who isn't working out. And we need to fire a lot of people. I've got 45 seconds. Here's my litmus test for who needs to be primaried next year. If you're a Republican and you didn't vote to object to the certification of the Arizona and Pennsylvania election results, you need to be primaried. And I've got to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that's probably 75 to 80% of the people that have an R on their chest that are in Washington. They need to go. They need to be challenged. They are not working in our best interests. So once again, I'm doing this to serve, not to prosper. I've tried to nail that down so people believe it, that it's not just nonsense. And I want your vote. I want to go to Washington, stir the pot, make the soup. Thank you.
Yeah, just a quick question. You said the Department of Education and the Department of Labor. What about any other departments? Because
Well, we could go down that list, but
what about Department of Energy, perhaps?
Department of Energy, Department of Commerce, Department of Agriculture, these are all things that could be given back to the states.
Do you know of any senators that we currently have in the Senate that believe the way you believe?
I have no idea.
Okay.
Yeah. They should, but they don't. Many of them don't.
All right.
And you know why, right?
I know that there's a vested interest.
Yeah, total vested interest.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And they're afraid of being called whatever they're afraid of being called. I mean, 2 people didn't show up today because Matt Gaetz is on the agenda. Did you know that?
I'm not surprised.
Yeah, and they said that it was a media thing. They thought the media would take it badly if they went and Matt was here. I mean, the dude has not been charged. There's nothing. It's just accusations. And so we reinforce with the media. Our politicians reinforce the media's bad behavior by doing stuff like this. Two candidates are reinforcing today the media's bad behavior.
Hi, Mark. So you mentioned election integrity. We all have our local districts that we vote in, right? It used to be that all of our local districts counted their own votes and then reported in. Now we don't even see where the votes go. They just go somewhere, on a computer somewhere, into another country. Is there anything that we can do in our Ohio election process so that we can count our own votes in our own districts?
So I'm running for federal office, right? And election, this is a state issue, but let me tell you what I know about it and what I know can be done and that I would push for. If you look at the entire federal election, those little hard drives that fit in the palm of your hand that attach to your Mac or your whatever. I'm a Mac guy. On that 9 or 10 terabyte drive could fit the image of every vote, every ballot from every person in the United States. And those could all be put out on the web. And you and I could get together and sit down with a 6-pack of beer on a Friday night and just go through them and tally things up. We need paper ballots so we can get back and do an absolutely fast and clean audit of every election. We should be forensically auditing every election everywhere because people have lost trust. How do you get trust back? You get trust back by proving to people that there was no fraud. Our Secretary of State believes, what he told me twice was, there is no meaningful fraud in the Ohio election process. What is the definition of meaningful? Is it 1%, 2%, 0.5%? It's ridiculous. He's a guy that needs to be primaried. He's a never-Trumper. He's a Mike DeWine surrogate, and he doesn't believe there was election fraud. Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Hi.
So you said that any Republican that certified the vote should be primaried. And my question to you is, how do we ensure that the Republicans that get voted in, if they are in place, how do we ensure that those are real Republicans, people that we would all agree with? Because the Republicans who are in there that we dislike, it's not the Republicans who are even voting them in. It's because the media and the money that influences them is paid for and provided by the same people who provide for Democrats. So how do we ensure that we can get real Republicans from the people that are here that we actually support and we agree with? How do we get them into office? Because it seems like it's impossible. We can't even get our own president into office legally.
That is a big problem, and that's a great question. And I'm not sure I've got a good answer for you. Other than the fact that you're here, you've got to put people forward for office, and then you've got to make them prove to you that they're going to do what you're asking them to do. Let's face it, folks, we all stink, me included. We stink at picking candidates. And here's why. I've done the study on the psychology of these people. We've got the highest percentage of sociopaths and psychopaths in the country in DC. And I am not joking about this.
It's true.
Those people sociopaths and psychopaths have no conscience. Because they have no conscience, they have no feeling of regret or remorse. So they do things like Nancy Pelosi sitting in front of 2 Sub-Zero refrigerators, 25 grand a piece, so that's a BMW sitting in her kitchen, pulling open the freezer, and in there are $15 pints of Jenny's and Ben & Jerry's ice cream. And she's doing it in the middle of a pandemic when people are out of work, fearing for their job. She's rubbing your noses in it. Yep. Psychopaths and sociopaths also enjoy giving other people pain. It's why she gets wackier over time. She needs a bigger and bigger serotonin hit because she's addicted She's behaviorally addicted to power and control, okay? I believe in understanding your opponents or your enemies. I've studied the psychology. I could go on for an hour about this. It's fascinating.
Social media can make or break a candidate, or even a business person or someone like me. So recently you made an unwise choice of posting a child with a mask. Tell me how you feel about mandated masking and mandated vaccines.
So, that's a great question. And for all of you, first of all, I'm a strict constitutionalist. You want to wear a mask, fine. Don't make me wear a mask if I don't want. Yep. If I want a vaccine, but you don't, that's fine, okay? But we can't do what the other side does, okay? Because that's what people tried to do to me on social media, and everybody but one person came back to me and said, you know, I thought about it and you were right. And I spent a whole day on social media proving this point because I thought it was a very, very important point, okay? If you want the right not to wear a mask, you've got, and you want to be a strict constitutionalist, you've got to give everybody else the right to wear a mask and not be yelling them down and shaming them. Yep. And I think you saw during that exchange, I don't care what people say about me. I have my beliefs, okay? They start with God, then my family, then the country, all right? So, so everybody knows. I posted a picture that I thought was the cutest picture in the world of my 3-year-old grandson and I walking into a restaurant. He had a mask on because my daughter and son-in-law live outside of Washington, D.C., and they wanted him to wear a mask. And I'm not going to tell them how to raise a kid. That's not my job. That's their job. I raised my daughter to make good decisions. She's married an awesome guy, married into an awesome family, and has an awesome grandchild for me. And another one's going to be here about June 26th. So, people just berated me for that. Yeah, you're giving the wrong... I'm like, no, I'm just showing you why I'm doing this, and you've chosen to interpret it that way. Right? We can't, if we're going to be like the other side, then we are not going to win over centrist and questionable Democrat voters. We're just not. We cannot be like them.
Hi, my name's Steve Krause, and I agree with a lot of things that you said.
Not everything?
Not everything, but you made a lot of...
I think I'm going to hear about the one you don't agree with, right?
Well, no, I'm not. I'm the co-host on Monday Night Roundtable, which is 12:20 a.m., 7 to 9 p.m.
So when are you going to have me on?
And that was my question. We've had a lot of the other candidates on for the Senate race, and we'd love to have you on. Will you come on?
I'd love to be on.
Great. Can I see you after?
Yeah, right after. Yeah. Wow. It's nice to be wanted. You know, this is really an odd thing for me, right? Trying to get people to follow me. Like, I've been a leader as a CEO. I had 800 people, but it's not comfortable. Oh. Hello. It's not comfortable for me to, have people want to take pictures with me and all the rest. First of all, I got a face for radio, and which is good. But yeah. So it's if I'm uncomfortable. Sometimes that happens. Yeah, sorry. If I'm uncomfortable, that's why.
Hey, Mark. So this question comes in from our online viewers from Eventbrite, of which we've got many, many, many across the whole country, really, that are dialed into this.
That's awesome.
But this question comes from Tiffany. And hello, Tiffany. Mark, to serve Ohioans at the federal level, you need conservative beliefs and the courage to stand by them. But you also need the skill and relationships to be effective. Can you tell us your plan to be an effective lawmaker at the federal level?
That's a great question. I spent 26 years in business convincing very large companies, Ford, Toyota, Nationwide Insurance, KeyBank, Diebold, Eaton, to do business with us. I don't know if anybody's done business with those kind of companies. It's a challenge. our sales cycle was 1 to 2 years. And people put you through the grinder. So I know how to build consensus and all that, but I also know when it's going to be impossible to cut a deal. And you've got to use force. And we have Republicans in Washington who are afraid to use force. It's like they meet someone halfway, and then they meet them halfway again, and before you know it, we've got this little slice and they've got the rest of the pie. And that's where we are today. So I guess you'll have to check some references on me with other people, and we'll do some events like that. But I think it's just as important to be able to negotiate and discuss, not compromise necessarily, and then know when you've got to walk away from the table and say, I'm not taking this deal, it's not good for me. We do it, business people do it in business every day, and politicians rarely do it. Trump loved it. I loved it when Trump did that. Done.
Mark, thank you very much.
You're
we
welcome.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank all of you.